Welcome to the Photo Flunky Show, recorded semi-live in beautiful Central Florida. This is episode 142. Today we're asking the question, do you have to explain your photos? Hi, thank you for joining us. My name is William Beem.
Hi, my name is Lee Beem.
And of course, we are here to help you improve your photography with visual storytelling. But before we do that, we want to let you know that show notes are going to be available at williambeem.com/episode 142. There are a couple of things that we want to talk about in this episode, and we kind of want to give you an idea of how to evaluate your photo concepts. I mean, you want to create photos that deliver a message everyone can understand. And you need this part of doing this, I think, is that you need to develop your own photographic style. But the idea for this episode came up with people that will show you a photo and you look at it and you don't get the impact that maybe the photographer was expecting you to have. And then they start explaining it to you. It's like explaining, oh, but you don't understand. Look at this element, look at this element. And if they have to explain the photograph to you, is it a good photograph?
The problem, I think the biggest thing that photographers or any kind of artists sometimes can overlook, the audience usually isn't the person who's skilled or has an understanding of your craft. You need to keep that in mind when you are, taking a photo or producing your piece. If you need to explain all the fundamental things and the elements that go into it, maybe you need to redo it in a way that speaks more for itself.
Well, you're absolutely right. The photograph should stand on its own. No matter what you did to create it, the final result is what people are going to see. They're not going to know what crazy camera you used. They're not going to know what lighting you used or what you had to go through to get it. None of that matters. Is the final photograph something that speaks to somebody in a way that they understand? And yeah, I get it. As someone who's doing photography, you may really want some credit for all the things that you did to try and get the shot.
But you share that with photographers because they understand all the techie stuff and all the, the jargon that you're using. The average person down the street, you go and pick up your kids from ballet and see the moms and dads there coming to pick their kids up. You've got a photo. They don't have a clue what f2.8 and what a 10.5 millimeter fisheye is. This is meaningless to them. They see a picture. This is the average person. Most people are not into photography at that level. And I think that's something to keep in mind. You're on a photography forum. You're in a photography group. You're speaking to friends who are photographers. Then it's absolutely appropriate because people out there do want to know.
And that's really where your audience matters for your photograph. If you're looking for something for the general public, they want to say, oh, wow, that's a great photo. And that's the end of it.
Yeah.
They don't want to know how you did it. They don't want to know what camera you used, what lens you used, or anything else. Photographers are a different audience. If you're going to a photography forum or a conference or having a portfolio review, they may ask you those kind of questions. They may say, oh, this is interesting. It looks like you used, a shallow depth of field here, so I can see your light source coming from that. But those are the same people that will criticize you. It's like, but you've got two shadows in different directions. And whereas the average person might not notice that at all.
Probably wouldn't.
No, but it's the kind of thing that there are little subtleties that go on in the back of somebody's mind that maybe they see something, but they don't really question it so much. But photographers will really zoom in on those things.
I mean, I had this when I kind of got quite enthusiastic in my photography, and it was something that I eventually learned. I think it was probably I discovered Google Plus for sharing photos, and that was the point where I realized when I'm sharing my photos, if I am looking for critiques or if I'm sharing for photography feedback or if I want to get some opinions and views from people who understand photography, there was a certain place I would share. When I just wanted to share the picture because of the story, that was a different audience. And that absolutely affected the places that I shared them. And also what I said about it. So I learned that when I stopped putting what lens I used and how much I zoomed and how long the exposure was, when I was sharing with friends and family, it wasn't that they didn't care. They looked and thought, I don't know what any of this means. They were more interested. Then I would put a little caption, this was last weekend, out with the family. And people can relate to that. They're more interested. That's what they want to see. Or just drop the photo with no caption.
And that's what I think really is best. Is put the photo out there. don't tell people about it. Don't tell them the story about it. And I say this as someone who on my blog has done exactly that. I said, okay, I've got this shot here, but what really makes it is this one lone man sitting up there on the top of the stairs smoking a cigarette.
But that's for people, you're helping people who are into photography. That is different.
That was for the photography audience on my blog. But when I put these photos out someplace else and somebody comes back to me that wants to buy photos, let's say of Washington, D.C. Most of the photos that I've sold as commercial art were from Washington, D.C. The Capitol building photo I've shown a number of times, the Lincoln Memorial, I've got some attention on it, but that one hasn't really sold quite as well. And I can't go to that customer and say, but look at this man over here, and start explaining what's in the photograph. They can see clearly what's in the photograph. They may have actually bought it if the man wasn't in there.
Yeah.
But for my intention, he made the photo.
Yes.
And that's the kind of things, like you start explaining this stuff, you just kind of sound a little pretentious.
It might be serious, but it's still the same as explaining a joke. It just loses all of its momentum.
Your photograph either works for your audience or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, you might ask them, okay, I'm sorry, this piece wasn't to your liking. What could I have done differently? Or what is it that maybe you didn't like about it? Questions like that, I think, are good rather than explaining why you did what you did.
Yeah. Or what would you like to see?
Yeah. And, for example, one of the art buyers that I dealt with, she gave me great advice. She said, you know what? I want something that's a bit more abstract. Mm-hmm. And I could have gone to the base of some of the columns at the Lincoln Memorial and just shot the base of the columns, and she would have bought that up like crazy.
Yeah.
Because it was abstract, but yet there were still lines and circles. And you can hang something like that in a corporate office building very safely, and yet it still somehow says Washington, D.C. because of the columns. Mm-hmm. You can explain that to what an art buyer wants if you're talking to a photographer. But if you're looking at just an average person that's saying, I'd like to see some nice photos of Washington, D.C., they won't care what your explanation is or why you did it. They either like it or they don't like it.
Yeah, that's true.
One of the things that I guess I brought this up before, but you want to consider is, are you capturing moments or are you creating art? Sports photographers, people look at those photos, and what really matters is, can you get in close enough to see the eyes and the expression on the athlete?
Yeah.
People really love, like, football photos. The guy with a football breaking through the line, he's leaping in the air. He's showing like all his physical prowess. He might be twisting and turning, but he's getting through the line with that football in his hand. You want to see his eyes. You want to see his face. You don't explain that to anybody. It's there. Or if it's not there, then it's not really a great photo. Maybe you're too far away. Maybe you didn't have a long enough lens. Whatever the excuse was, it just simply didn't work out.
Yeah.
When you've got a story coming from an event, you either capture the moment or you don't.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, and that goes back to something as simple as, your family birthday party or a wedding or whatever it may be. What's the moment?
Yeah, the moment is really the people. It's the atmosphere, the energy, the expressions, the mood.
You know what? I'm going to say it doesn't even have to be people, because we just saw one of our friends. Her name is Susan Koppel, and she does some really nice wildlife photography out in Nevada.
She's fabulous.
And she's currently going on a photo safari in Africa. She's gone to a number of different reserves. And just the day that we're recording this, she posted a lot of wildebeest just raging and running in a herd. I thought that you don't need to explain that one. You know exactly what's going on in that.
You see the dust swirling around them, their hooves. And
it doesn't always have to be action. She's taken some really wonderful photos of big cats. And that's what she does, here in the States. But she's out there in the wild. These big cats can eat her.
Yeah, that's a little bit different.
I think
here.
I think that gives me just a little bit more, knowing what she does at the preserves here. It's like, maybe those cats there would also be dangerous too.
I choose America.
Yeah, but she's over there with wildlife in Africa, and she's coming up with some really stunning photos.
She is really good, but she's really turning out some breathtaking photos there.
And that's, she's still capturing an event, but she's doing it in such a way that I kind of actually wondered for her safety, because when you see a whole bunch of wildebeest going, even if you're in a truck, well, what happens if the herd decides to run in that direction? She's
a smart lady. I think she's got a really good telephoto lens on there.
I hope so. I don't want to get too close to something that might
eat you,
might eat me, might trample me, might otherwise cause injury and or death.
Any of those are bad things.
That's why I prefer portraits of people who aren't out to get me. All right, so capturing the moment is one thing. Creating art is another thing, and the difference being, you're deciding what goes in your photograph and what doesn't.
Well, you can plan the one. You almost have to plan the one, and you cannot plan the other.
I prefer the one that I can plan because it's safer.
I have more fun with the capturing the moment. The flip side is sometimes you walk away with nothing.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you know what? Even with your planning, sometimes you walk away with shots that you didn't really care for. We did one a few weeks back where I wasn't thrilled with the environment. I love the model. She was great. She was fantastic. She was fun, energetic. And this was like a competition for bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. She'd really worked on her body. She looked absolutely phenomenal. I just hated the environment. So that was the part of the plan where if I look back on this, I didn't do enough due diligence on that location. But it was kind of the thing where she got the location and she wasn't thinking about what the background was going to look like. No, she wasn't,
but she did organize all of this for us, which was great because we would have, it would have been a lot more work on our part if we'd had to find it. So that was very gracious of her.
But the fact that I didn't like it as a photographer, it worked perfectly for her because that environment was a gym. It was loaded with equipment.
What she wanted.
It was exactly what she wanted. And it told a story. Like, I got this body by doing stuff in this place.
Yeah.
And that worked.
And that's also, we were, you were a little bit concerned about the other people in the gym who were walking behind and might be in the background of the photo. And she was like, well, when you're in a gym, you expect to see people. It almost sold her story instead of looking like a posed shot. So she had a completely different take. It was like, yeah, but this is what it looks like. This is how it is when I'm here.
Yeah.
Just more people usually.
Yeah. And we went there on a day that it wasn't that busy, but there were people in our background. And, as a photographer, I want a clean background. My idea of storytelling was different than what we encountered that day, but that's okay. Client was very happy with the photographs we did, and it was very appropriate to the story she was trying to tell.
And I understand that. I mean, I guess it's the same as me with my post-workout photos. No makeup, messy hair, drenched in sweat, taken about a minute after I get back.
That kind of brings us to the next point that I wanted to say. If you look at a collection of your photos, or if you show it to someone else, do they have any consistency as a group of photos together? It's like if you say, this is my gallery or this is my portfolio, do they stand together or is it just a mishmash of different things?
I think mine do stand together. There is a lot of variety and contrast in the settings of the photos. There's a lot of color contrast because I'm a little bit loud in everything that I do. But at the same time, I think anybody who's followed me, even just for a little while and paid attention to, some of my posts, would click on something of mine and go, oh, I know who that is, even without seeing my face. That looks like, because my photos are me as I am in that moment. And I do that on purpose because that's my whole message, is just being real. This is what it really looks like. When I look great to go take a shower and spend time on my hair. This is a fitness story. It's about
sweaty.
This is about the behind the scenes stuff. This is about all the work you do. This isn't about, showing the medal at the end of the race. This is all the months and months that go in prior. All
right. So you've seen my photos for years.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see consistency in what I share?
I do. And your style has changed a little bit.
And I think that's okay. You're allowed to mature and progress with your style. But what do you see as consistent in my style?
Your use of color. And that's something that I enjoy. You like to speak with color. You use color a lot for mood. You like to have, I don't want to say bold colors, but I like you like to have a color presence as a major part of your story. And I love color, so that's something that I always notice. Your composition, you're very precise with what you do without being clinical. There's a lot of creativity in what you do with your photos, but there's nothing haphazard about yours. By way of example, my stuff has a deliberately haphazard look. Yours, you have an organized look when you present your creativity. I don't really know how to explain it, but I can look at your photos and say that looks like a Beem photo.
So you see, let's say that somebody didn't know who the photographer was, but you lay out my photos. Someone could say the same photographer took all of these photos.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we're trying to suggest is
you have a style.
You develop your own photographic style, your own voice, and you look for something in your photos that's consistent. I know some people who do this by only shooting one subject. So-and-so is a concert photographer. So-and-so is a street photographer. Other people do it with their post-processing. They will develop a certain style. And that I get, but the thing that scares me about that is I've seen some styles that I just don't like, and then every photo seems ruined. Even though the composition, the subject, the lighting, and everything else is brilliant, but there's like, I know one guy on 500px who does this, and he's got the same preset that he puts on everything, so everything's got this blue color cast to it, and I just don't care for it. He's very popular there. His photographs are lovely, except for the post-processing on them. But you know what? If I see that style, I know it's him. And so that post-processing kind of style can work for you or against you, depending upon the taste of your audience.
Yeah. I mean, I see other people who have the same pose, and you look and their outfit changes, the day changes, but the pose is the same. They're always in the same place or with the same background. There's nothing wrong with having that. I get a little bit bored doing that, but I don't think consistency is a bad thing.
Well, you know what? One of the most popular photographers on Instagram is Murad Osman, I think. I might be mispronouncing his name. And it started off when he was taking so many pictures, and his girlfriend just reached back and got tired of it and grabbed his hand and said, "Follow me," or whatever. And he leaned back. He took a picture of his hand being led on by her. She's a lovely woman. They were in an interesting place, and the photograph got traction. Next thing you know, they're traveling the world doing the same pose. And now people are copying that kind of pose, where the woman is out front and leading someone, holding him by the hand, taking him along, and the photographer's, the guy's taking the picture of her. It's an interesting style, and they had enough of it that they could do a book, but everybody would know that's his photo.
Yeah. And unfortunately, now that everybody's copied, when I see stuff like that, I just scroll right by it because it's old.
But it wasn't old.
No,
it was his style.
When you've got your own, and that is the difference. When you've got your own style, it's yours.
And those are the kind of things that we're talking about with visual storytelling. It could be anything that you can imagine, but there's some kind of consistency. There's some kind of thread that runs through all of your photographs that really helps tell a story when more than one photo. We hope this has been helpful for you in understanding why you want your photographs to tell a story and why you want to have a style for all of your photographs, particularly if you're going to be someone who's sharing a lot on Instagram, if you're really providing a portfolio or a gallery. You want to have that voice that runs from one photo to the next. And if you've got ideas for how that style can come about, please let us know. We would really appreciate some comments in the show notes that you'll find us at williambeem.com/episode 142. Thank you so much for joining us on the Photo Flunky Show. We would love it if you would subscribe on iTunes. Just go to williambeem.com/iTunes and you'll find a link there to subscribe. You can find it on the show notes page. You can go to photoflunky.com to see a player with all of our episodes and subscribe there. And if you're just holding your device right now, you can probably subscribe there as well too. Thank you so much. We appreciate you, and we'll see you again next week.